Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the GEP-RC Cinelog30. And in a few ways, we'll be doing a comparison to the Cinelog25. Link in the video description to the full review on the Cinelog25 because we won't be watching its flight footage in case you want to see that. But there are many similarities outside of this, just their design, and these in my opinion are the most versatile CineWhoops. I really kind of think all of the manufacturers just stopped making CineWhoops. We should just fly these. You might have a special reason for that. Let me know down in the comments section. Let's get down to the desk. Let's start covering them. Outside of just how they look, they're very similar in their components as well. But the Cinelog25 came out of the time where we could still get Nebula Pro cameras for Vistas. The Cinelog30 is now featuring the Caddx Polar camera, which does not have low latency. It only does 16:9 as well. So that could be a point that you need to make sure of when you're ordering, depending upon when you're watching this video. The flight controllers in these are very, very similar as well, both F4, both with an OSD. The ESC is where the difference is, of course, because we're running different prop size, different kV motors. On the Cinelog30, we have a 35 amp ESC, and on the Cinelog25, we have a 20 amp ESC. Of course, both have mounts up top, so we can run a naked GoPro or other sort of HD camera if we choose to. And it also has this gimbaled, gummied platform up here. Back to the motors. Again, they're both 1404. The Cinelog30 is running 3850 kV motors. The Cinelog25 is running these gold 4500 kV motors. And of course, we've got much different props. We've got these GymFan D63 props, and we've got the GymFan 3-inch props. These are 2.5-inch props. And these are tri-blades, whereas these have 5 blades. Also, there is a difference in the antenna, depending upon when you're watching this video. We had the Cherry Rush that we were running for a long time on the Vistas, and now Caddx has a new smaller antenna on the Cinelog30. And if you're choosing to go the analog route, they both have VTXs that run up to 600 milliwatts for extra clarity in your picture and extra range and penetration. Link in the video description if you choose to look at the analog version. And they both have wiring, so you can connect a naked GoPro, or maybe you will go after the new GEP-RC HD camera. I think that's a Hero 9 that's naked, but I don't have one of those, so we're going with my naked Hero 8. In the slow CineWhoop type of flying, we're going to be running this RDQ series 850 milliamp 4S battery. And in the faster flight, I'm going to run this little 650 milliamp 4S Cotter battery. I flew it faster on this battery because I could feel the extra agility of the reduced weight. With the Cinelog30, you get 2 extra prop guards, an extra set of foam, an extra set of props. And in the accessory bag, you get another battery strap, which is shorter than the one I'm running. You also get a foam pad that you can put on the bottom of the Vista or bottom of the quad. You also get some antenna tube. You get various screws. You get a couple extra little mounts in here. You get a support card, a Vista manual, and 2 sheets of stickers. We got a nice calm day here, but if you look at that flower in that pot on the ground right in front of us, you will see it moving around a little bit. Of course, there's more of that wind up above the trees and above the house. I pretty much never have a calm day. Even on those days where you just feel like you're sitting out in the humidity and you're just melting and the sweat just drips off of you, there's a breeze. You know, you're just not in it at that moment. I grew up in a much more rural area, and we felt the wind much more because there weren't very many trees. It was all farmland, and our houses were much more spaced out. This flight, again, is on that Race Day Quads 850 milliamp 4S battery. The Race Day Quads batteries are made by G&B, if anybody is questioning that still. I get that question every once in a while. And the flight will run for 7 minutes and 9 seconds. You could probably get more if you do things like maybe have an extra light GoPro. You know, you decrease your load, you can fly for longer. I do feel like these props on this are a little bit higher pitched than they needed to be. I think we could get some efficiency there as well for longer CineWhoop type flying. Of course, when you change out the props, that means you're going to have to change out the tune probably. It may work to some degree, but you may find you might have jitters in your camera. And speaking of the camera, this GoPro Hero 6 does have FPV stabilization, so it is smoothing out the flight to a degree, nothing like what Real Steady Go is capable of. You'll notice it, especially in the faster flight that we'll do after this, that the FPV stabilization kind of does a catch-up every once in a while, and so it does kind of a jerky motion. That's not the quad, that's the FPV stabilization. Some of you will be disappointed to know that it won't be long before we have the backyard being worked on, and we'll get in a pool. My wife and my kids, especially my girls, they have wanted a pool for many, many years, so we are going to be getting one. Back in the fall of last year, we got with a pool guy who we've known for many, many years and decided to bite the bullet, and we recently got some plans for the landscaping. I don't think it's going to impact my flight that much. I think it'll impact my flight time a little bit, because I suspect, especially when we get into the warmer months next year, that I'm going to have people in the pool, and I won't be flying when the pool is open and I have people in the pool. So we'll still have the same trees, the same bushes, the same shrubbery. It'll just look a little bit different. I do think we're going to have a covering over the garage, so I'm going to have to modify my punch outs from the garage side to the chimney side, but we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be pretty nice. I think it's long-term livability. It's going to be something that we enjoy for many, many years. I have essentially fought moving for the longest of time because I like our house, I like where we live, I like the school districts, I think the kids are comfortable, so I've kind of advocated for not moving. And after looking at houses for the last couple of years, I think my wife has kind of conceded that our house is pretty good and that we can just make it a little bit better. Anywho, a little personal story there about the changes that we're going to see coming in the coming months. There'll be a quiz later. No, not really. You see my neighbor over there? He's mowing. Michael is his name, and their dog Cooper. Cooper oftentimes keeps track of the quads as we fly around. Cooper's a little bit skittish of me yet, but he's getting closer to becoming friendly and maybe not barking quite so much when I come out to fly. He doesn't really bark at the quads, he barks at me, which is comical because he pays more attention, it seems like, to the quads when I'm out flying. Maybe it's just that buzzing sound. Anywho, so I stated in the intro that I think that the Cinlogs are the most versatile CineWhoops, and from those that like CineWhoops and do that sort of flying, I'm really curious on why you would go with one of the, what I'm thinking are more traditional, the beefier, heavier, typically 3-inch props exclusively sort of CineWhoops over these. The only reason I can come up with is the durability factor and maybe a little bit of a safety factor because the props are more enclosed. So if you're filming someone on a scooter or skateboard or something, that you would be less likely to hurt them if you were to bump into them. Whereas the prop protection on these Cinlogs is much more lower profile, which I think gives it its flyability, its ability to do more of the traditional flying that we do with quads, not just the slow, steady cruising flight. And we will take a look at the native polar footage as well. And I've got some nighttime footage that I wanted to show you. The nighttime footage that I did on the polar review, it was accurate, but it wasn't quite adequate. I think I could have done more. And so in this particular review, I'm going to take a look at the polar flying at night in the front yard. And it's real dark. And I'll do a comparison to my Hero 6, which the Hero 6, spoiler alert, really can't see anything other than lights, versus the polar allowed me to fly. That's the huge contrast between the dark or low light capabilities between those two cameras. The polar does very, very well, and the GoPro couldn't hardly see anything. And we'll also take a look at the native camera as well during this slower flight. We'll do the DVR from the DJI goggles so that you can take a look at the camera and any sort of movement the camera has in flight. There is a little bit of movement in both of these, actually, a little bit of that shimmer or shake, or some people like to call it jello, in the camera. It's not very dramatic, it's pretty minor, but you need to see it and need to be comfortable with it, especially if you're considering a purchase. You want to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into before you open your wallet and make that buy. I think one of the things that, if you're comparing these two in this sort of flight, the Cinelog30 is going to carry a heavier payload better. It's going to do slower, smoothie, cruising sort of flights, and it's going to be able to carry a heavier battery, a heavier camera, and it's going to handle it better, and it's going to do it longer. There's just greater efficiency in the prop size over the 2.5-inch prop of the Cinelog25. So that's something that if you do this sort of flying, you need to know right away. I will say that the Cinelog25 feels more agile when you're doing the faster, more aggressive flight. But because the way the battery mounts, if you're running a HD camera up top, you are limited on camera angle because you lean your GoPro back so far and you've got that toilet take top mounted battery, that you can only go back towards the battery so far before it hits the battery and you can't go no more. We're nearing the last minute of the flight here. I think it's actually about 40 seconds left, and then we'll go into the faster flight. Michael is still making his rounds on the yard. The bare spots in our yard will actually go away because that's about where the pool's going. And then we'll have a nice little barbecue and sitting area over there where the current barbecue is sitting. Here we go, we're going to land for the flight. Again, this flight on the 850 milliamp 4S battery was 7 minutes and 9 seconds, according to my notes. Okay, so this flight is the same day, I just have a different camera angle. And so same wind, same heat, same conditions. By the way, the heat on this day was 96 degrees. I don't have the feels like temperature according to the Weather Channel data written down on my notes. This is on the smaller Cotter battery, the 4S 650 milliamp. And the flight is going to last 4 minutes. And this is about the maximum camera angle that you can get from the naked GoPro, and it's got this little protrusion on the back of it, on the back of the lens and the case, that you could go a touch farther, but then you're going to be touching the battery, and I didn't want the camera touching the battery. Any sort of vibrations that might be coming up through the quad would just rattle the camera if it were to be happening. So while this isn't the absolute limit, it's really close, I think, to the limit of the camera angle that you can get when you're running that size of battery. You run a bigger battery, you're going to get less camera angle because bigger battery is going to consume more space behind the camera. So you should be able to get this in this version now. My understanding is with the Polar camera coming out that they've sourced parts for the Polar camera, and they have the parts for the Vistas. I guess one of the difficulties was the Nebula Pro camera that everybody wanted. The DJI camera seems to have gone away. The Nebula Pro kind of looks to me like it might be a recased DJI camera, which is fine because it makes it more of a standard sort of camera for mounting, and frame designers will go back to the typical mounting patterns that we used to use for cameras, micro cameras specifically. So when you go to the website, and there will be links down in the video description to the various sources that you can get these, I'll link whoever's got them. When I get this stuff from the manufacturer, I'll link to any FPV shop that I can find these. I don't always have a long list of those, but it makes it easy for you, especially if you're on mobile, to just tap a link. Some of them will be affiliate links, and that does mean that the channel gets a commission. Not all of them will be, though, because, well, this is my hobby. It's not my job. I don't depend on this revenue, so I don't get terribly hung up about making sure that everybody who watches one of these videos clicks on an affiliate link so that the channel earns money. It's nice to have, because then it allows me to buy things, so that if the vendor doesn't send me something for some reason, then I could go ahead and still investigate that quad, and I can bring it to the channel and get to show it to you, because vendors don't always send every product that they have. I'm only, if you're not familiar with the channel, I do micros. So usually it's 3-inch props and less. I have dabbled in the 4 inchers as well as the 3.5 inchers. I actually kind of really like the 3.5 inchers. They're a very interesting category. That was a question that I recently posed as well, with 3.5 inch being sub 250. Is that just a niche, a fad, or is that something that many people are looking at? And so far the responses that I've gotten are that it's really targeted for those who are looking to get that HD camera and under 250 grams, so you can avoid any over 250 grams rules and regulations. But still, with the 3-inch prop and those heavy pitch props, I thought it handled very well. I do think that it's pushing the motor a little bit harder, and I said this earlier, that I think the Cinelog30 with its motor prop combination, which is actually running the same size of motor, just different KV, is more agile. And that's commonly true when you have a well-pitched motor prop combination, but it's overall smaller, as you can just feel the additional agility. This does fine, and this gives you a sample of if you were to be out trying to do some filming of someone on something faster, like a bicycle, a scooter. You're not going to keep up with a car, but hopefully that flight gave you some sample of its speed and agility. Okay, this is my nighttime flight here, and if you're not familiar with my neighborhood, I always feel bad about repeating this stuff, but I never know, who's new to the channel. My neighborhood does not have any street lights. We only have house lights. The HOA, or the Homeowners Association, does mandate that we have a lamp in the yard. Not all the lamps are always lit because light bulbs do burn out. We don't always have to have our exterior lights on, but many of the houses do. And after I show you this segment here, I'll show you what the GoPro saw, which is, well, it kind of looks like the GoPro just sees UFOs because it could just see lights, and you're moving, and the GoPro only sees those lights, so it kind of looks like those those videos we've seen over the years of supposed UFOs and lights moving in weird patterns. That's what it reminded me of when I rewatched the footage. There are spots when I'm flying around that it does feel like, if I didn't know the area so well, that it might be difficult, but for the most part, dark, 10:30 at night, I thought it was pretty remarkable, and still being able to fly. Analog cameras do better at night, no doubt, but for a first iteration of a Vista camera that does daylight as well as dark, I thought it was really, really good. But you might not be interested in this sort of flight. You might not be flying at night. Maybe it's nice and comfortable where you are all the time, so you don't have to worry about flying when the sun goes down. Let's go ahead and take a look at that GoPro footage now. So, yeah, not much to see here, is there? There's as many dust specks on my monitor as I watch this back with you as there are lights that we see in the neighborhood. And yeah, I'm not, I don't know how I could verify this, but maybe you could match these up somehow. I did my sync clap, but I can't see myself in front of the camera. I'm like 4 foot in front of the camera, and I couldn't see myself. And I thought about refilming it and putting like a flashlight or a spotlight on myself and then turning that off as I took off just so I could sync the two cameras. But I think this kind of demonstrates the difference between the Polar camera and that GoPro Hero 6. So here's a little sample of that slow flight from our native camera. You can see we've got those upside down prop protections in our view. We've got the red and the gray foam. And if you look especially in the distance, I think that's where you'll probably notice the camera movement the most. But I wanted, again, make sure that I give you this opportunity to see as much as you can. Dollars are important, and you want to make sure that you're investing your dollar where you want to. And this is a part of it. Maybe you're looking to fly this without an HD camera, without doing stabilization. This is what you would see. Of course, you could change your camera angle and see less of the whoops. I do think you're going to have to get some pretty good camera angle in order to not see the whoops at all. But this gives you a sample of the camera and how it operates in this sunlight, slow flight, and these weather conditions. And whether you see it as movement or not, that's really up to you. I'll let you diagnose. That's something that I'm not terribly sensitive to, so I don't want to downplay it for you. Make sure you're studying this. Make sure you're watching full screen in the highest resolution available, and diagnose this camera for all it's worth. So to recap on the comparison part of this, I think these are the most versatile, dare I say, the best CineWhoops on the market. Again, I'm anxious to read your comments on how you might see that, and I could be completely wrong or completely missing a need for a much more traditional CineWhoop. I would concede that. I don't fly CineWhoops on a regular basis, but these, because they are very versatile, I do enjoy. Outside of the things that I already covered, I think something to consider is that the prop guards on these are going to break. Yeah, especially if you're flying aggressively. I've got some crashes I can show you up in the corner, but my crashes are going to be different than your crashes because my crashes are all different as well. So if you're flying in a area that has concrete and cement and metal stuff that really has a high impact on these things, do expect to break prop guards. So if you're part of your FPV journey where you're still crashing a lot in most of your flights, regardless of flight style, these might not be a good category for you. But if you're maybe a little bit more established, or you've kind of got your hands around flying, but your plan is to fly slow and steady with maybe an occasional aggressive move, might be fairly versatile and suit your needs. The Cinelog30 did come with 2 extra prop guards. I don't believe the Cinelog25 did. Check the packing contents on the web page to verify that. Maybe they're including extra prop guards. The nice thing about the prop guards is you don't absolutely have to have them. I would highly encourage you to fly with them, but because the way the Vista sticks down here below, let me get that angle just right. Hopefully you can see that now, how we've got this little area, and you can add that foam pad from the accessory bag to get you a little bit further up off the ground. So your props aren't going to be on the ground when you were to take off if you have a nice, hard, flat surface. So you don't have to have the prop guards. You can take them off if you wish, or if you break one, maybe you try to fly without it. I think if you've got a remnant hanging around, again, that might create vibration. So then you get that vibration into the quad, things could change as far as how it flies. But don't expect these to, last through a lot of hard crashes, especially during aggressive flight. I think the Cinelog30 ones will last longer because you'll very likely be flying a lighter, smaller battery, and the quad weighs less overall, but they're still both going to break. The foam around the outside doesn't do a whole lot. I think it does more when you're flying around people and maybe you have a skateboarder or someone on a scooter or something of that nature that you're flying around, you bump into them, that foam might feel a little bit nicer than a hard plastic or something like that. It's not going to do a whole lot for your durability. The other durability factor, as I see it on these, is the cameras. If you're flying aggressively, the cameras are kind of exposed. Of course, because we're reviewing the Cinelog30, let me use this one. So if you're flying forward and you come up against a tree or hard flat surface, the camera is going to be relatively close to the prop guards. The prop guards are going to flex in, so the potential for getting camera damage, it's there. We have this little TPU printed adapter that does come with the quad. If you need more of those, you can print one yourself or buy them. They're readily available. So I think that's another area of durability versus a typical Cin quad. The camera's kind of buried between the two hoops, and therefore it's much less likely to get camera damage. And for aggressive flight, I think the props are a little bit high-pitched. They have both the same size motors, the 1404s. They're just different KVs. And I think the pitch of the prop on this is a little bit much. It's tuned well. It flies well with it. But I think a lower pitch prop would probably suit the Cinelog30 a little bit better. But that's something that you can do down the road when you're comfortable with it. Either way you go with these, I don't think you're going to go wrong unless you're looking at these as starter quads. Because again, the prop protection is going to break and we have a little bit of a camera exposure. But if you're looking at these, I'll have the link to the review of the Cinelog30 down in the video description. You can go and watch that and do a comparison of the flights. And I'll have a link to the places that are selling the Cinelog30 also down in the video description. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.